Hey guys, it's Ruba. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm just going to be talking to you guys about my current favorite podcast. So if you guys are interested, just keep on watching. Okay guys, so before I start this video, I just want to give you guys a disclaimer that I love like anything true crime. So a lot of the podcasts I listen to, if not most or all, are very like true crime related. So just like a little warning, if you like hate true crime or don't like murder stories or anything like that, definitely ask someone else for advice about podcasts. But if you are into true crime or like good podcasts, then go ahead and just keep watching. Okay guys, so I'm actually gonna have my phone up because that's how I listen to my podcast, and I want to be able to show you guys all of them. So I use Apple Podcasts to listen to my podcast. So all of the ones I listen to are free. I don't know if that's like the same for all devices, but I know Spotify has a ton, and then Google Play or the Google App Store or something has a bunch of the free ones. So I guess the first podcast that I really enjoyed, which is like super hyped, so I was even like contemplating not mentioning it, but in case some of you guys have not listened to it, you definitely should. And so this one is called Serial. So I will give you guys like a little blurb on what it's about, but this one is just about this kid who is like, super young and got convicted of a murder of his like ex-girlfriend, and it just is like a crazy story with a lot of like twists and turns, and a lot of people believe that he was like wrongly accused, and so the person who like tells the story just kind of goes through like all of the events and actually has like audio of her talking to the kids, so that's really cool too. And it just is a really good podcast, and I'm sure if any of you guys like true crime, you've probably already heard of it, but yeah, definitely a great one to listen to. Hey guys, so the next podcast I really loved was one called Cold. So Cold talks about this guy who's like a husband. His name is Josh Powell, and it pretty much just gives you like a really like long story on his background, and then his like wife, or the woman he ends up marrying, it kind of talks about her background, and then it kind of leads to what all went down between them. But it is just a crazy story, and Josh, like I think even in like the first episode, like first few minutes, they just tell you like Josh is like a super troubled person, and just like it's a really good podcast, but it also makes you think like it's kind of crazy that this lady married this guy who ended up being like kind of crazy. But yeah, I actually really liked it, and it has a bunch of episodes. Okay guys, so the next podcast that I suggest is called Over My Dead Body, and so this one is like pretty short, so it's not like a super long podcast, but it just talks about this couple who like had kind of a troubled marriage, and it kind of led to just craziness. And like I said, Over My Dead Body, this podcast is like pretty short, so it didn't take me a super long time to listen to it. And the way I listen to podcasts, my friends think I'm crazy because I literally listen to like true crime podcasts, but I like to go on really long walks, like in the day for sure, but by myself, and just listen to these podcasts. And I don't know, it just is kind of like my stress relief / just what I enjoy to do. I don't know if that's weird, but yeah, that's how I listen. And I really do enjoy the podcast about like the couples who are like in a not so great marriage, and then it kind of leads to like one of them dying or just a bad situation, because I really just like the background story and really how everything turned. And it's crazy to me that you can be married to someone and then like however many years later it can end up in such a bad situation, or like even like a murder, which just blows my mind. So I really do enjoy listening to those. Okay guys, so the next podcast that I suggest is called Dirty John. So I think a lot of people have heard of this one, but it just talks about this man who like is with this lady, and then he's like kind of like a con artist, and kind of like tricks her into being with him and turns her family against her. More like turns her against her family, I should say. And just like this craziness. And it is like a good podcast, and I definitely recommend it. Okay guys, so the next podcast I recommend is called Up and Vanished. So this one again is a true crime podcast. What's new? But it's about this like beauty queen who goes missing, and they kind of like, she's from like a small town, and so they kind of like dig into like the possible suspects and what's happened, and they actually didn't have like a conviction, and it kind of like is interesting towards the end because they do end up getting a conviction. So I think that's really awesome. That I think this podcast kind of like encouraged like further investigation of her case. So I think that's really, really, really great and super important to keep talking about like cold cases for sure. And so this is one I recommend, and it kind of is nice when you have more of a resolution in a case versus like, oh, they never found out who killed the person, or they never found a body, or like things like that just make me like even more sad because I feel like there's not as much closure for the family. But I really, really liked this one. Guys, so the next podcast actually is not true crime, but it's called Dr. Death, and it's just about like a surgeon who just didn't really practice well, and the medical like board in the state that he was living kind of just let him keep his surgery license, like medical license, and let him keep practicing, and he just hurt a ton of people. And it just, oh my god, this one was like absolutely crazy. Like I think it just really opened my eyes up to like how many things can go wrong like in the healthcare system, and with like surgeries, or even just like regular like checkups and all of that, and like how much stuff can go wrong, and like no one really like realize, or them realize but nothing be done about it. And so I don't even know if what I just said makes sense. I can't even recall what I said. Okay guys, so the last podcast I'm going to talk about is my favorite podcast ever. I am literally obsessed with this podcast. Like I am actually obsessed with it. I actually even messaged the like host of this podcast on Instagram, like DM'd her, and I was like, hey, I'm obsessed with your podcast, like I want to be your friend. But she didn't respond, which is fine. But it's called Crime Junkies, and it is literally like the best true crime podcast in my opinion ever. Like, so each episode is like 30 to like 45 minutes long, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter. But it just talks about just random cases, like some that are super popular, some that aren't as popular, some that are like cold, some that are solved, some about just missing people, and it just has like all different types of stories. And I think my favorite part about this podcast is just like the hosts of the podcast are just super like personable, and as like sad as the podcast can be, just because it's talking about a lot of like cold cases that haven't been solved and all of these like murders and stuff, just the hosts just make it so much more like meaningful, and like always talk about how we should like be talking about these cold cases, because if we don't talk about them, then they're not really going to get solved, and just like even add humor to it, and are just amazing. So I definitely recommend Crime Junkies. And yeah, that's probably like my favorite one, and I'm still listening to that one. So I usually like to like focus on one podcast at a time. So this is the one I'm listening to right now, but I think like all of my friends know how obsessed with it I am, which is for a really good reason. So if you're like into true crime, or even like if you're not, it's just like a really great podcast to listen to. Okay guys, I lied. There's actually one more podcast that I recommend that is not true crime. It's called Imagined Life, and I really like this podcast. I actually told my dad about it, and he's been listening to it too. But so this podcast kind of tells you like the story of this person and like what they've gone through. So it usually like starts from like a young age, and it kind of like immerses you into their life, so you almost feel like you're that person. I don't even know how to describe it, but they just like go through like all of the details of their life and what went wrong and what was good. And usually it's a lot of like sad things like in childhood, like not an easy childhood, and then at the end they like give you like more and more clues as to who this person is, and you can kind of like guess like, oh, I think this person is this person, or I think this person is like Miley Cyrus, which I don't think they have ever done one about Miley Cyrus, but that's just an example. And then at the end they like tell you who they were talking about, and I really like that podcast as well. And it's kind of fun to listen to like on a long drive at night, because I don't really love listening to true crime at night just because I get scared. But yeah, I just really liked that one as well. So I definitely highly recommend that one. Okay guys, so that concludes my favorite podcasts / recommended podcast video, and one of my friends actually told me to make this video just because I literally am always like listening to different podcasts and talking about different podcasts. So hopefully I like sparked some like ideas in you guys about what podcasts to listen to. And I know this was a different video, but yeah, one of my friends recommended it and I thought it was a great idea. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I love talking about podcasts. If you guys want to like DM me on Instagram or anything like that, I will be happy to talk to you about podcasts, especially if they're true crime. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I will put that down below. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.